Hello everyone and welcome to another tier list ranking video. I haven't done one of these in a really long time. So it's exciting to get to do one of these again. Anyway, what we are going to be ranking is I have listened to all of the David Bradley First Doctor audios that he has done for Big Finish. And I figured, screw it, let's talk about each one of them. Let's go over it, and we're going to put them in the tier list. So we have 10 out of 10. This is, of course, best of the best. 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 6 or 7 out of 10, and then the 1 to 5 out of 10s, which, this is like, don't listen to, it's awful territory. This is, of course, it's okay, this is good, this is great, and this is, the best of the best. So, let's kick it off. The first story, The Destination Wars by Matt Fitton. So this starts off with the TARDIS team landing on Destination, which is like a colony type place. It's a human colony, and at first they think they're they're on Earth in the future, but they aren't. They come to find out that, of course, like I said, they're on Destination, a colony, and the people of this colony are getting ready because the inventor, who is, he's kind of like not their leader per se, but like, he's made a lot of the big innovations for them. He's finally gonna come back. He disappears every couple of years, and then he comes back, and he looks to see their progress, and he's got something new for them, and all that type of stuff. So that is the main purpose. That is the main plot of the story I can give you before getting into spoiler territory. So, with just that, I think that this is a strong first story for this TARDIS team. You had David Bradley as the Doctor, so we're pretty used to him by now. But then you have the Adventure in Space and Time team, who are now no longer just playing the actors; they are playing the characters. However, the actress who played Barbara, I believe her name is Gemma something. I can't remember the last name. She actually played Barbara for Big Finish before Adventure in Space and Time. So for her, this isn't that hard to do. But I will say that the other two actors they do a really good job of playing Ian and Susan, respectfully. You can tell the actress playing Susan, she's doing a bit more of a high-pitched kind of voice, trying to mimic Carol Ann Ford. But the actor playing Ian, he doesn't really try to sound like William Russell. He kind of puts his own spin on it, and it's fine. The actress playing Barbara, she does try to sound like Jacqueline Hill, and she does a pretty good job of it. And then, of course, David Bradley, he's just playing his version of the First Doctor, and that's all I want. And then, of course, we have right here the inventor, who, spoiler alert, in about, so skip like 10 seconds so you don't get spoiled. It is the reveal he is the master, and this is the first time the Doctor has met him since leaving Gallifrey. So, where do we put this one? I would actually put this one... For now, we'll put it in 8 out of 10. It's a really good start. It's a really good start. I really like the ideas that it has with the inventor, and then we get a bit of a flash forward. And the way we get the flash forward is very creative. I really like the way we get to see the future of Destination, and of course there's a plot in there with Destination about like some alien warriors who are invaders. Of course, you can obviously put together very quickly when listening to the story what's the idea with them. But yeah, I really like it. I think Destination Wars is a solid 8 out of 10. And then we have The Great White Hurricane, the next story. This is by Guy Adams. So the box sets is, each box set has 2 4-part stories. And they have a great format, I think, for the box sets, which is one of the stories is going to be a sci-fi one. The next one's going to be a pure historical. And I think that is perfect, because of course we all associate pure historicals with the First Doctor era. I love pure historicals. I think we need to bring back pure historicals to Doctor Who. I don't know, I just like the idea that it's like there's no extraterrestrial threat. It's like the thing is the Doctor and company just have to survive living in the era. I like that. So the Great White Hurricane. This is of course about the Great White Hurricane that was in New York, and it's literally just the Doctor and company trying to survive the hurricane. It's them encountering people in a hurricane. We enter a bit of a gang war. The Doctor and Susan get involved in a gang war. Ian and Barbara get involved in a domestic dispute with a woman and her trying to, take her son away from his abusive father. And we get to see Ian and Barbara try and help a train that got stuck in the snow. It's a really good story. And I listened to this one when it was raining. I was walking in the rain listening to this one. So while that's not snow, it did help kind of engross me in the story a bit more. Being in like bad weather myself, I could relate to them complaining about the bad weather. It is currently snowing right now as I say this, so this is the perfect time to actually listen to this story. I would put it again in the same tier as the Destination Wars. I don't think it's better than the Destination Wars, but it is a very good story. I very much enjoyed the Great White Hurricane, and it is a great historical. And if you do ever find yourself in snowy weather and you want a Doctor Who story to listen to with the snow, the Great White Hurricane is a great one. We then next have the first story of box set 2, which is the Invention of Death. So this sees our TARDIS team end up on a planet where the people are they're like amiibo-esque, like they haven't fully developed yet, and these people they can't really die. They can't really die because again they're not fully developed yet. They're not like fully like they're just like kind of like cellular type creatures. They like I said, like more amoeba like. So they don't understand what death is, and when encountering the TARDIS team, who are very much different to them, that we start to. It's very much the concept of taking a mature subject matter like people dying and that, and introducing it to a group of people that are very innocent and are oblivious to that, and it's now introducing them to the horrors of that concept. Of course, as we go forward, we start to see some of those amoeba people start to die, and it's trying to figure out why it happens. There's no real villain in this story. Like, the Destination Wars has a clear villain. The Great White Hurricane doesn't really have a villain because, again, it's just dealing with the historical fact. You have some antagonists here and there who are a bit douchey, but no big villain. This one is the same thing. There is no villain specifically, right? There's no like big bad guy that you have to stop. It's just people in certain scenarios. I really like it, and I would say 8 out of 10 as well. I would say 8 out of 10. It's very much in the just okay tier. Like, I'm thinking, would I listen to it over the Great White Hurricane or Destination Wars? And I wouldn't, but I wouldn't say it's lesser than them. So it has to go in the same tier. And there's the cliffhanger to part 1. Really freaking shocking. We then move on to the Barbarians and the Samurai, which is the pure historical. This sees the TARDIS team in Japan. And I love this one. I freaking loved this story. I would put this one over The Invention of Death. This is written by Andrew Smith, by the way. I would put this one over Invention of Death easily, so I'll put an 8 out of 10 tier as well. You're going to see probably the 8 out of 10 tier is probably going to be the tier that we get a lot of stuff in. But yeah, out of the box set, I would say the Barbarians and Samurai is the best one. Like I said, sees the Doctor and Co. in old Japan, and we see them get involved with some dirty political things going on with Japan at this time. This is back when Japan was more cut off from the rest of the world, and this shows them trying to enter it, but not in the best way possible. Very good story. I loved it. We then have the Mohicans, I believe that's how it's pronounced, the next story in box set, the first story in box set 3. This is written by Mark Platt. Now, Mark Platt, if you are a big Doctor Who fan, that name will usually you associate that name with quality. But I'm gonna actually say that this story goes down a peg to a 7. It is not a bad story, but when you compare it to the other 4, it is a very noticeable step down. Yeah, it is a noticeable step down. Again, more pure. Getting two pure historicals back to back. That's not a bad thing. Yeah, I would say it's a definite step down. You can notice it's a step down, but again, it's not a bad story. It's just noticeably weaker than the others. The TikTok world. Excuse me. Oof, sneezed. TikTok world. This is the sci-fi one. I would put it higher, but, and you all know this, the ending of a story can make or break it. And the ending to this one, I was not a fan of how it's resolved. The idea that the TARDIS, we're in like this kind of weird like place out of time, and the TARDIS crew is slowly succumbing to what's happening in this area that they are in, and like when you die, you don't necessarily die right away. You're kind of like in like a limbo in between time and space and all that. Like that, the idea of that is so good, and the way it's handled is very intriguing. And again, there's no real antagonist to this story. There's an antagonist to the Mohicans, by the way, pure and simple. But there is no real antagonist to TikTok world. And I don't hate the story, but again, the ending ruins it. And I'm not a huge fan of the ending, so it does have to go down here. Then we get Return to Skaro. This is supposed to be the second encounter with the TARDIS crew and the Daleks. They have come back to Skaro after the Daleks. And you can easily slot this one into the TV show, I feel. I really enjoyed it. It's nice to see Skaro after they've... This is also before Planet of the Daleks is where this takes place, I believe. I believe this takes place like before Planet of the Daleks. So keep that in mind. I would put this in 8 out of 10 tier as well. We're back to form with this one. Getting to see, like, you know, like we go back to the ruins of the Dalek ship. The Dalek ship has now been kind of ruined and it's desolate, but we find out that that is not quite the case as we thought. And it's always nice to hear the Daleks, isn't it? And it's good they didn't do the Daleks right away. I think waiting this long was a good idea. Wait for like box set 4, where you've kind of now we've established the format and stuff with a couple of stories to make it stand on its own. Now here's the Daleks, and we bring them in with a very good story. Then we have Last of the Romanovs, another pure historical, and this takes place during Russia, just before the war. And I really liked this one too. I'm gonna put it also an 8 out of 10. I would say Return to Skaro is the better of the two, but that's not a slight on this one. Last of the Romanovs is a very good pure historical, and it does have brings up that hard truth about history, and a hard thing about traveling in the TARDIS, which is, you know, sometimes history sucks and you can't change it. You just can't change it. We dealt with this problem with the Aztecs, with the first Doctor telling Barbara, you can't change history, not one line. And Barbara reiterates that to Susan in this one, that she's like, I've learned from your grandfather. We can't change history, Susan, no matter how much we want to, no matter how much it would benefit people. We can't do that. It is set in stone. It is the past. It has already happened, and we must let it unfold the way it should. And we get that with this one. There's also a mention of the Scarlet Pimpernel in this story, and Big Finish will later go on to make a story about that with the Sixth Doctor and Perry, Flight of the Pimpernel, which I have not listened to, but I was tempted to after this one. We then get to the final box set, For the Glory of Earth. This is easily the weakest story of the David Bradley run. Easily the weakest story of the run. I did not like it. The first part is okay, right? And then the second part, they just throw you in, kind of like no explanation to what these characters are doing. It's not until later on in the story you kind of realize what they're doing. I did not like this one, man. I really didn't like this one. And the themes for this story is very blatant, and it's not at all subtle. Like in the other stories, you can tell what the theme is after, and that's when you can tell a theme of a story is done very good, or a message that the author is trying to tell you is when it's after the fact. You're like, hey, this was the message of the story, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that because I was too busy, engrossed in the captivating story. What is that? Shut up. Ads just start freaking playing. But when you, like, after the fact of experiencing a story, you're like, oh, that was the message. Oh, I didn't know because I was too engrossed in the good story. This one, the message is so freaking blatantly just in your face. I can't enjoy the story that much. And none of the side characters in this are endearing in any way. Like, they're all just crappy people. And I get that. Not everyone's going to be nice, and there is crappy people in the world, but it's like every character, bar this little blob here thing, when they do a gender thing with this thing, going, we do not conform to your gender. Shut up. Yeah, this story, it's just talking about it makes me hate it more. I'm going to put it in the 5. It's a 5 out of 10. Don't even bother. We then have The Hollow Crown, which is better than The Glory of Earth, but not by much. So I'm going to put it in there. This takes place with this has the first Doctor team meet Shakespeare, and I'm like, okay, we got to get a reference to the Shakespeare Code, right? We get a bit of a mention there with the Shakespeare going, the Doctor. Oh, I knew a man called the Doctor, but he looked very different. And then we move on from that. So it's very much that the author of this story did not want to deal with the Shakespeare Code, but it's like, the audience is going to want you to talk about it. So it's like very much just like, there, I mentioned it, go away type thing while we do the story. And the story is, it's another, we have the thing with Jude Shakespeare, who is Shakespeare's other unknown son, which is like, what? I thought it was only Hamlet. And then it's like, well, yeah, because it's Judith Shakespeare. It's Shakespeare's daughter who's pretending to be a boy. Thankfully, it's not the message you think of when I say that. Shakespeare in this, they try to make him come across as like he's wrong with not wanting to use the theater to have a political statement. He's like, no, I want to keep that out of the theater, right? You think what you want when you go down to the pub and talk with your friends, but when you're in this theater, you don't do that here. And that's not a bad thing, and the story treats it like it is. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have a place of escapism where you don't talk about your beliefs, you don't talk about any of that stuff. In here, we just focus on the good story. We just focus on the acting. We just focus on our play. And they treat that in the story like he's in the wrong. He's in the right. Especially with modern day media, we very much need places to just escape and not have to deal with any of this garbage. And again, you have Susan, again, not getting the idea we cannot change history when an historical event starts to happen. And they're like, okay, Susan, we gotta bounce. She goes, no, I'm gonna stay here. And they're like, no, you idiot, you have to go. Like, Susan gets really on your nerves in this one. She did in mine. She got right on my nerves in this one. The Doctor with Queen Elizabeth, their scenes are great. I loved the scene there in the part 4, the end of part 4 with the first Doctor where he offers the Queen some advice. That is really good. The idea of how they escape a situation that they've come across where a certain character is sentenced to death, and it's like, how are we going to get him out of this? The way they got around that, I thought was really clever with what they introduced in the story. So again, there's good parts in it, but really stupid ideas in this one as well. And that is going to do it. That is my ranking of all these stories. None of them quite cracked the 9 out of 10 tier. But you know what? I think I have to put one in 9 out of 10. What is the best one? Right? As you can see, for Glory of Earth is easily the weakest story. It's the worst story out of all of them. The best one, and the best one we will graduate to a 9 out of 10. Is, let's go out of these, which I will listen to. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. It's down to these 3. Actually, I would say it's down to these 2. Which one would I classify as the best? I would say the Barbarians and the Samurai. We're going to graduate that one to 9 out of 10. That is the best one. And that's just more my pure historical bias showing, more than anything. And Japan. I love Japan and their culture and all that stuff. So I was very excited to listen to this one. Very good. Yeah, so that's my rankings of the David Bradley First Doctor audios from Big Finish. I hope we get more First Doctor audios from Big Finish with David Bradley. They've kind of pivoted more to Stephen Noonan, but I hope we get more with the Inventor in Space and Time team, especially because the Hollow Crown does end on a cliffhanger that has not been resolved yet. And I should say that pretty much every story does bleed into the next one. Like Destination Wars bleeds into Great Red Hurricane. Great Red Hurricane bleeds into Invention of Death. Invention of Death bleeds into Barbarians and the Samurai. I believe Barbarians and the Samurai actually ends, and then it's just, there is no pickup. But Return to Skaro bleeds into Last of the Romanovs. You know, the Glory of Earth bleeds into the Hollow Crown. Like, they kind of tend to bleed into each other, like the First Doctor era tended to do. So I do hope we get another box set to deal with the ending of the Hollow Crown. Anyway, that's going to do it. If you have listened to these stories, let me know what your favorite one was in the comments down below. And if you haven't, well, hopefully this has helped you, as most of these box sets are very much worth your time. The only one I would say, if there's any box set not to get, it is the last one, the most current one, Volume 5. Don't get that one. But all the other ones, 1 through 4, they're worth it, I would say. Even TikTok World, even though the ending sucks, like these 2 stories again, they're not bad stories. Just compared to the quality of the others, it is a bit of a noticeable dip. But I would still say pick up the set if you want. You're not going to go wrong with it.